though he's sort of doing what's necessary to look good on TV.
Sometimes, yeah, that's how I feel.
Is that what you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Brett, talk to me.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Little Blair, but you know what time it is. We're talking to you guys about Married at First Sight, part 1 of 2 videos we're going to drop on this particular couple. Guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure you do me a favor, do yourself a favor, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Click on the bell button for notification of the uploads. And for those of you returnees, you already know the minerals, baby. You got the minerals. You got the minerals. Yeah, yeah. Alright. Alright. So, watching the latest episode 12 with Brett and Olivia, I think it was quite evident that there was some really great points that we can actually pick up on and really help the couple with. Seeing Olivia and Brett go back and forth in the discussion before they met Pastor Carl, I think really opened up our eyes to the actual real dynamics and what really is going on between Olivia and Brett. First, I want to say this. Brett is a very logical individual person. We've known this since day dot. And I think the way that he interprets information, the way that he sees things is a very linear, logical fashion. Olivia sees things in a more art form, creative form, if you want to call it, roundabout way, a more emotional way of seeing things. And therefore, jigsaw pieces put down linear fashion don't work for her. So when Brett is using linear fashion or logical answers to answer her questions, it will seem invalid or it will seem insensitive or insincere because the answers that are coming require some level of emotive angle to them.
Can't be cognizant of the fact that it's a TV show is naive, and the reality is it is. And I don't get why the fact that I'm aware.
When they're very logical, it can seem like you're being insincere. For instance, when he was talking to Pastor Carl and saying, obviously, what do you say to the insecurity and the fact that you're, sorry, not insecurity, what do you say to the insincerity and the fact that you're kind of maybe potentially, pretending on camera? He said, well, I wouldn't be here if that was the case. And that's a very logical answer, but it doesn't bring the emotive side of things. Because what Olivia potentially wants to hear is, of course I'm not here for this. I'm here for you. You know, I care about you. And that's what she wants to hear. But what he said was, oh, if I was here, like, why would I be here? Like, if I was trying to fake it, why would I be here? Surely I would do this, that, right? And I call that almost like the politician's answer, which is what she mentioned previously last episode. That is very that, but it's not actually addressing, I guess, her emotive needs. And so there's a breakdown in communications because the way she's receiving his information, she won't understand it. And unless she's coached and spends time with him to really understand how he communicates, she will never understand the way that he communicates to her, and she'll always take offense to the way that he says certain things. Vice versa too, when Olivia's approaching things in a more emotional fashion, when he brings his logical sense of thinking, he too will also miss her point because he's not seeing it from her angle. So he will consistently feel like he's under attack from her point of view, right? And so we get to see later on as well, that Olivia keeps on. I think this was a question that was asked by Pastor Cow when he said, obviously,
Olivia, do you believe him? Honestly.
No.
About why don't you believe his words when he's saying it? And I see a lot of self-protecting here from Olivia. Often in relationships, due to fear, we all do it. Due to fear, we look to self-protect ourselves, and we do that sometimes by shutting off ourselves emotionally. We do it by shutting down the arenas of vulnerability, and we do it also sometimes by attacking or getting in there first before the other person arrives emotionally to say something. And the reason why, again, is because of fear. We fear that we'll be hurt or we'll be left and abandoned. And due to those fears, it can cause a reactional behavior like not believing what Brett is saying. But again, I believe that's tied into the way that she sees the world. She's got more of an emotive sense, which is why she loves the freedom to go and do whatever she wants to do and spend the money that she wants to spend, whereas Brett is very logical. And so he sees things from a point of view where it's like, hold on a minute, for instance, the house situation, hold on a minute, you earn how much? 3 times more than me, but you ain't bought a house yet. Now, some people say, oh, well, not everybody wants to own a house. Well, why would you want to rent? If you have the same kind of money that you could buy the house, why would you rent? Do you understand? Right? Because the mindset is that the person's in the moment. They are a free spirit. They're only thinking about now. They're not thinking about the future. Whereas Brett is thinking, I've got to work hard. I've got to think about the future. As you've heard him say, I've got to think about retirement. He's thinking ahead, whereas Olivia's thinking at the right now. There's a hedonistic behavior to Olivia, where there's a long-term objective from Brett. And I think that's another area where they're clashing, in a sense of Olivia's like, I want to live, and he's like, I want to live long. and the I want to live long is scary to the person who wants to live, because you're cutting short their fun. And the person who's living short wants to not doesn't want to think about living long, because anything can happen to you in the meantime. Life is for living. And so I understand both points, right? And so, she mentioned...
Olivia, who is the off-camera Brett?
He's a nice guy. He's caring, he's thoughtful, and he's just Brett.
I think you should lean over and kiss me.
His answer to about being different from the off-camera to on-camera again was very logical. How can you not be aware of the cameras and the differences, etc., etc. And again, it failed to tap into the emotional side of things, which is that, hey, like, again, I'm not here for the cameras. I'm here for you. It fails to address the person in front of you. No, I'm here to, obviously, I know you're not, maybe you're not seeing my true side, but, that's got nothing to do with the fact that I'm playing on the camera. And so, sorry, my breath. And so, obviously, for again, Olivia, it's hard to believe.
You believe him.
It's just confusing. It's confusing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the sarcasm that...
Yeah.
Because he's not emotively appealing. And he's seeming very calculated and callous and cold, because he consistently produces a logical side. Which is that normally what happens with us as human beings, we try to keep a logical plus emotional side of things. What you're seeing with Olivia and Brett is one extreme to the other, which is, the freedom emotional side of things to the logical side of things. And the two are clashing. And so, for Olivia, I do understand her frustration in the area of the fact that it will look like he's different off camera, right? The whole touchy-feely, da-da-da. But I would have my same complaints that, Olivia, if you're doing that, you're doing touchy-feely, get close to me, loving, da-da-da. When I see you on camera, when he puts his arm around you, you don't want to get close.
It's closer and gives us growth. So I'm hopeful for the next month and excited to see what the future holds.
So we can all feel like maybe someone's not potentially behaving the same way they would off camera as they are on camera, right? And sometimes your accusation can actually reveal your nature of your own heart and how you feel about yourself. Sometimes the accusation is more about you than it is about the other person. Sometimes we're seeing a lens of accusing someone, but actually it's about us and our own behaviors. So I saw that and I understood her point, but I was like, wait, hold on a minute. I've just seen later on in the show that when he put his arm around you, you didn't get close. It took you a little while to get close eventually. Do you know what I mean? So, again, I can see both sides on that as well. What I would say is obviously the sarcasm is tiring, it's boring. The sarcasm is getting to a point where, bro, I don't think that sarcasm, I don't think that the amount of sarcasm you bring, I really think that's also a defense mechanism for Brett. I think the amount, listen, we all can be sarcastic, but there's a time and there is a season under the sun. There is a time and there's a season under the sun. You got to know when and where you can do these things. But not only that, I really believe that when Brett is doing the sarcasm, it's triggered. And it's triggered because he believes, and he mentioned this, he believes that she too also is trying to leave the relationship.
With this, accusation of insincerity, felt like she was projecting insecurity and trying to pick a fight with me so she could have an exit strategy. Because
trying to make up excuses to leave the relationship, right? But then her defensiveness is triggered by his sarcasm. Because she feels like he's not being his authentic self. So now she can't trust him because he's being sarcastic. So now there's a vicious circle going of my defensiveness comes in because you're sarcastic. My sarcasm comes because I feel like you're being defensive, right?
Personality trait.
Yeah. Me expressing how I'm feeling is not a way out of this marriage.
Not only that, a point is also made as well, about the fact that he felt like, you know, the way she said certain things is very rude, and yet, and it's very painful and very.
Sometimes your conversations come off as very mean.
My intentions weren't to be mean.
My intentions were never to be disingenuous, and that didn't really matter much.
Harsh. And yet the same thing from her also to him, which is that obviously when you're being sarcastic, I think you're being rude and harsh. And because you've got a strong personality, as you mentioned, I think it's later on in the show, you've got a strong personality, what happens is I have to also make sure that I'm addressing you.
And I feel like your personality is so strong that if I don't come at you, you'll just squash me down.
What do you think about that, bro?
In a very strong manner. So do you see it? Each individual person's kind of reacting and being triggered by what the other person's doing. Now, is it chicken or the egg? It's one of those conundrums. But at the end of the day, someone felt something at first and reacted to it, and the other person responded. This is why I say that, you know, that when you respond, even if you want to respond in a certain way, because you want to make sure there's not a cycle going on, you don't respond in a manner just to make your ego feel pleased. Why? Because you don't want to enter and engage into a cycle of things. For instance, a tirade or a back and forth of insults starts when the second person decides they're going to retaliate. When the first person insults and the second person says, I'm not retaliating, the cycle can't continue. Now, the person can continue insulting you, but the cycle can't continue. But if I then retaliate, a cycle starts to happen, and then we forget who started the beef. We're not sure if the chicken or the egg came first, like we'll see with Brett and Olivia. And what we'll see is that you're defensive because of my sarcasm. My sarcasm is causing you to be triggered, and wanting you to be strong and say things firmly. You say things firmly, and then I feel triggered to be sarcastic towards you. And someone might make an argument. The fact that Olivia may be a little bit more firm because she feels like he makes 3 times less than her. I don't know if that's really an argument. I don't know if that's really been shown here. I don't know if that's really come into play here. While I do understand and I do respect the fact that money is an issue, money is a true issue, and I really believe that, okay, let's say if we were, that money does affect Brett and it does affect Olivia. She thinks that he's been restrictive, he thinks that she spends too much. And that definitely will come through in the fear of relationship, because the person who's a spender, okay, fears the budgeter, and the budgeter fears the spender, because each individual person believes that they are right in the position that they're in. I'm working with what I have, and I'm working with what I have. I'm doing what I like, and I'm doing what I like. And so therefore there is this back and forth consistently between two prospective parties as well.
Your question as to whether or not she's trying to find a way out of this. The root of all that is fear. And fear is understandable, but it doesn't have to.
You know, and another thing, just to speak on the fear of leaving, because she hasn't been in a relationship for a little while, and he too also has been cheated on in the past, that's definitely going to play a role, you know, in the fact that the fear of her leaving will cause him to potentially react in a certain manner. And her not having a relationship for a little while also as well will, you know, cause her to feel in a certain way. And her inability to bend. She doesn't want to bend as well. I think that's a big thing. And I think she's got her life set up in a certain way, right? She's Miss Independent. Miss Independent. That's how I love her. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's got that independent flow, right? And it can be very hard to include somebody into your life and be dependent upon each other. And I heard a quote which was really good. It was like, we're not called to be dependent or codependent, but we are called to be interdependent. Meaning, I do need you, but it's not a thing where, you know, I'm at a deficiency or an advantage. I need you because we're human beings are set to be sociable. We're supposed to work together. If you look at the Tower of Babel, as much as God came down to confuse the languages, they were interdependent. They were working together to build something, to acquire something. And so fear can make us independent, and the independence can stop someone from getting close, because we can see, for instance, why do men not like dating successful women when they're not as successful? Because of the fear that when you're independent, you won't need me, right? You won't need me. And because you don't need me, I feel insecure about that. It's fear, right? Now, a lot of them might say, well, get over yourself. But you yourself will feel the same thing when you date a man who's very well-statured, he's got enough money, he's got many women chasing after him. You'll feel that insecurity too. Now, not everyone, but, you know, a lot of people feel that because they realize that he has want for nothing too. If he has a chef, a cook, a cleaner, listen, and there's girls throwing themselves at him, you will feel that same sense of not being needed. And so fear is created when we feel like we're not needed. Or fear can be created when we feel like we're overly needed. If I don't go in, nothing goes on. Do you feel what I'm saying? Codependency. And so, yes, I understand both parties again and how they're thinking and feeling about this fear. Brett is not as open as he would like to make himself out to be, and I think he admitted that as well. And again, that will also be a trigger for Olivia's fear. That, you know, this man is not going to open up. If he's not going to open up, is he really here for me or is he here for the show? And so Brett's defensiveness also is, again, it triggers each other. My defensiveness is from what I've experienced in the past, and I don't want to give you too much because you're not giving me enough. I then trigger you because now you're feeling like I'm not sure if you're here for the show or you're here for actually me, and I see your defensiveness, you're not giving me much emotionally. I'm now triggered, and now when I'm triggered, I might say something in a certain way, and then again, Brett then goes back into his shell again like a turtle, and then says, I'm going to protect myself once more, right? So it's a continuous cycle of triggers. They're cyclic kind of triggers that go round and round and round, and until someone says, I'm going to step out of this. Because I think when I watch Brett and Olivia, one of the things that I don't like about Brett is that sometimes he doesn't own that, listen bro, you feel a certain way. Yeah, for instance, even the conversation with Pastor Cal at the beginning, he was going on like, yeah, I haven't got anything to say to you're the one with the problem, not me. I haven't got a problem.
So, do you feel like we've moved past yesterday?
Do you?
Bro, of course you got a problem. Because if she's got a problem, we've got a problem. You understand? Like, she's mentioned to you that you do sarcastic faces. Bro, you don't even know you're doing it. That's a problem. You know what I'm saying? So, again, I really believe that obviously Brett needs to sometimes just reflect it a little bit just to kind of find out where he's at and why he does what he does. Olivia too, I really believe that she needs to reflect as well and look at the reasoning for, because when Pascal's asking her, why don't you trust him? Why is it that you feel like he's been ingenuine? There was a lack of an answer coming through. And the reason why there's a lack of an answer is because she hasn't really thought it through. She hasn't sat down with herself and said to herself, why is it I feel the way I feel? But she's reactory on emotion. And because of that, she's not going to be able to communicate to Brett why she feels the way she feels. Yeah, the truth of the matter is, probably there's something, you know, she eventually came down to it about the sarcasm. The sarcasm is one part of it, but what does the sarcasm mean for you? What's the implicated meaning of his behaviour? And that was like that too. And I think the last part I want to kind of bring out was that Brett's concern with the image of the relationship, that he wants to protect the image of the relationship. I think, which is, you know, it's cool, it's not a problem at all. I just...
Over protecting us as a couple and being image conscious about, you know, how we're portraying ourselves to the world, with me trying to be artificial when I
think to myself, obviously, what's the reason for your defensiveness? Why do you want to protect the relationship image to the outside world? And we saw this previously in the episode as well, but we saw it on the boat. We saw it on, you know, at the place where he said rate the relationship. Brett, I feel like the defense, and you know, he saw him do it when she said she doesn't do affection. He said, "Oh, we don't do affection, right?" And I think he really is he really wants to be a team player. Really wants to protect the image of the relationship to make sure he's covering. But I also feel there's like a fear there as well, which is that not to expose any of the cracks to anybody else, because people don't ask questions, and maybe those questions will be exposing him. And also as well, sometimes we can feel like because our relationship is not at the best place, we don't want to expose that person to the outside world. Not because of that person's protection, that's part of it, but sometimes because it makes us feel embarrassed that we're not at the level we need to be at. As in, I've chosen you and I'm not at the level where we should be. And sometimes that can also be an issue for the person. So yeah, Brett and Olivia, I mean, there's a lot to deal with. We're going to deal with part 2. And kind of talk about what they spoke about. But I really hope that you guys learned something from this. If you've been through a situation where you're protecting yourself, or in a relationship where you feel like you're being unable to be transparent and vulnerable, that's an area to review of yourself and say, hey, what is my fear here? And then begin to tackle that by facing it and saying, hey, today let's talk about this. Let's actually address this. Alright? Guys, make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notifications of the uploads. We appreciate it. Stay locked, stay loaded. More love.